ChatGPT, AI machines,
satellite, engine ignition,
click here,
and liftoff.
From Recorded Future News and PRX, I'm Dina Temple-Raston, and this is Click Here's Mic Drop, an extended cut of our favorite interview of the week. Our guest today is Kateryna Stepanenko. She's a Russia expert at the Institute for the Study of War.
And you're from Kyiv, right?
I am from Kyiv, yes. I was born there, but raised in New York. So
You sound nothing like a New Yorker, and that's a compliment. Where in New York? The city?
The Bronx.
Oh, the Bronx.
The Bronx.
Really? You sound nothing like the Bronx.
And we wanted to talk to her about this quiet dissent that's rising in Russia. Each month, thousands of soldiers are returning to their homes with stories of what's really unfolding on the battlefields of Ukraine. And what they're saying doesn't sound like the Kremlin's version of events.
There was a lot of criticism that was emerging on Russian Telegram channels, and it actually gave a rise to individuals, Russian servicemen, to go against the Russian Ministry of Defense.
It started as a murmur online, but those murmurs are turning into something else, a chorus that Vladimir Putin can't quite tune out. And that has Putin worried. Stay with us.
This show is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
Here we go.
It started before dawn. Ukraine woke to explosions around the capital, Kiev.
The last several hours, Russia has invaded Ukraine, advancing...
When Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, analysts expected the war to be quick. They said Kyiv would fall in a matter of days. But the war dragged on, casualties mounted, and a new front opened. Not in the trenches, but online. And as we reported on Tuesday, nobody waged that war better than Yevgeny Prigozhin, the brash leader of the Wagner Group.
Вот это вот парни ЧВК «Вагнер», которые погибли сегодня.
Prigozhin understood the power of social media in a way that the Kremlin didn't. And Kateryna says he used that power to put the Kremlin on the defensive, to try to push for policies he thought would help win the war.
He carried over that experience to actually blackmailing the Kremlin using social media, complaining publicly about veteran issues and saying, that Russia can never win this war, or that Russia needs significant restructuring of the Russian Ministry of Defense.
For Putin, it was more than an embarrassment. It was a crack in the facade of power.
Kremlin's objective has always been to portray itself as powerful and that it could outlast Ukraine's will to resist Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
So the Kremlin reached out for an old playbook, one from the Soviet era.
It's actually a Soviet theory called the reflexive control theory, in which Russians argue that they can use a variety of different means to convince and change someone's perception to accomplish their own strategic goals.
Though Kateryna has another name for it, cognitive warfare.
My passion project personally is defining and really understanding how adversaries use cognitive warfare to influence our decision makers.
Cognitive warfare is more than propaganda, more than censorship. It's manipulation on a deeper level, shaping what you think before you even realize you're thinking it. It uses everything from social media algorithms to conspiracy theories. creating a reality where facts feel fluid and trust erodes.
So for the Kremlin, one of the biggest issues that they have facing them is that protracted war in Ukraine or possibly against NATO can cause a lot of people to be upset in Russia. There could be grievance over the fact that, there's sanctions and Russians are losing access to Western goods that they liked, or, they have to increasingly bear the toll of losing loved ones on the battlefield.
Cognitive warfare is designed to keep those grievances from taking root, so the Kremlin can still convince Russians to do what they want.
Public opinion is extremely important for things like recruitment or general support for the Kremlin's vision and especially for the economy and how the Russians, are essentially being asked to take more economic sacrifices every year with the Kremlin's war objectives.
So the Kremlin made it harder to learn what was really happening on the front lines. Suddenly, bloggers who were once driving right up to the battlefield to cover the war are now being prohibited from doing so.
They can't report on what's going on the front lines and the atrocities that they see or the failures of the Ministry of Defense that are taking place.
People who ran Telegram channels were accused of leaking false information to the public. And loudmouths like Prigozhin? Some analysts say the Kremlin handled him the old-school way.
Caught on camera, the final seconds of a private jet. On board, reportedly, the head of the Wagner mercenary group, Yevgeny Prigozhin.
But even with Prigozhin gone, it became a game of whack-a-mole. Other commanders started posting on social media, trying to force the Kremlin's hand, demanding command changes.
The Kremlin, after that, took numerous measures to restrict major officials that had presence online from doing something similar to what Prigozhin had done. They also fired some commanders that tried to use a similar tactic to blackmail the Kremlin into making command changes.
Take July 2023, when the Kremlin fired Ivan Popov, one of Russia's most successful military leaders.
I had no right to lie. Therefore, I outlined all the problematic issues that exist today in the army in terms of combat work and support. I called a spade a spade.
Like Prigozhin, Popov had publicly complained about conditions at the front.
Counter-battery combat, the absence of artillery reconnaissance stations, and the mass deaths and injuries of our brothers from enemy artillery.
He was very successful at it, but he was removed because he actually used the information space to basically accuse the Kremlin of not doing necessary command changes in Ministry of Defense and which would facilitate rotations on the battlefield.
The message was clear. Even from the country's most respected commanders, no criticism would be tolerated. But there's just one problem. It's one thing to shoot down a mutinous leader's airplane or fire a mouthy commander. It's quite another to entirely control the stories of tens of thousands of fighters who are coming home.
The Kremlin is really worried about the class of mobilized servicemen that don't necessarily fit into various different narratives.
Because the last time Moscow faced a wave of disillusioned veterans after Afghanistan in the 1990s, the country unraveled into crime, chaos, and humiliation. And the Kremlin worries that could happen again. That's when we come back. Stay with us.
In cybersecurity, your greatest fear isn't the threats you see, it's the critical signals lost in the noise. Every day, security teams sort through millions of potential threats. That's why Recorded Future exists, to give you precision intelligence tuned to your needs. Our advanced AI detects patterns humans might miss, while our threat intelligence experts, veterans of military and intelligence services, provide crucial context. With Recorded Future, you gain the confidence to identify critical threats and the precision to act before they become attacks. Learn why 1,900-plus customers, including 45-plus sovereign governments, trust us to detect threats faster and achieve 350% plus ROI within a year.
It isn't the battlefield that keeps the Kremlin up at night. It's what happens when the soldiers come home. Vladimir Putin has good reason to fear the war stories they'll bring back.
We have to remember that the Kremlin, especially Putin, he had lived through the devastating 1990s in Russia, which were plagued by Afghan war servicemen coming back, veterans coming back, with psychological trauma, with no prospects, no jobs, and turning to crime.
Soviet troops will start pulling out of Afghanistan in 4 weeks' time under agreements signed today in Geneva.
It's difficult for our soldiers. It's difficult for the Afghanis. It's time to reach peace there.
When the Soviet Union withdrew from Afghanistan in the late 1980s, thousands of soldiers returned home. Traumatized, angry, broke, and Kateryna says that made them dangerous. Those men didn't just struggle to reintegrate, they became a force in their own right. They organized, they protested, they formed veteran communities that the Kremlin couldn't control and couldn't ignore. And Moscow is worried soldiers returning from Ukraine will do the same thing.
If they come back en masse and they form, a civil society around their grievances, then not only can the Kremlin not continue its war in Ukraine and, possibly an invasion of NATO countries, but also the Kremlin probably wouldn't be able to sustain the regime.
If Russia were to end the war today, some 700,000 soldiers would return home. 700,000 men and women with stories to tell. 700,000 men and women the Kremlin can't allow to speak freely. So Putin is moving first, offering payouts and privileges, not as gratitude, but for leverage.
There's a lot of rhetoric going around with needing to support mobilized servicemen and increasing their payments and so on and so on.
The message is clear. Stay loyal and you'll be rewarded. The Kremlin has set up a fund for returning soldiers, including some $126 million earmarked for those disabled in battle. There's debt relief, education funds, sweeteners to make sure their loyalty remains with the state.
The more that you tie them to the state and give them advantages with the state, the less these veteran communities or servicemen would actually be vocal about their experience in the war.
And it's not just money. The Kremlin is tightening its grip on where and how veterans can speak. New laws make it harder for veterans groups to raise money or even operate. Instead, Putin is promoting government-sanctioned patriotic groups.
So one of the things that the Kremlin is trying to do is to intensify censorship means eliminate civil societies and replace them with pro-Russian, pro-war, military patriotic organizations deliberately in an effort to maintain the regime, but also to sustain the protracted war efforts.
In the last couple of years, the Kremlin rolled out the SVO, a state-run veterans club, a kind of Russian VFW. And the goal isn't subtle.
So we're seeing that the Kremlin, after the mutiny, really realized the importance of co-opting veterans and servicemen to be on their side, paying them off as much as possible, forcing them to be in these Kremlin-sponsored communities or funds.
And for those still fighting at the front, there's another plan.
To get back to your idea of veterans organizations, some people think that Putin isn't interested in stopping the war partly because he doesn't know what to do with these returning veterans. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. We actually recently saw the Russian Ministry of Defense sending around a survey of mobilized regiments and asking how many of them would be interested in signing up for contract service. That means that the Kremlin could essentially keep them for as long as they want to.
The logic is brutal. You can't protest or organize if you never come home. And so the war continues, not just in Ukraine, but in kitchens and living rooms across Russia, where silence and fear fill the spaces words can't. It's a place where the truth of the war lingers unspoken, waiting for someone brave enough to say it aloud. From Recorded Future News, this has been Click Here's Mic Drop. It was written and produced by Megan Dietrich, Sean Powers, Erica Gaida, Zach Hirsch, Lucas Riley, and me, Dina Temple-Rest. It was edited by Karen Duffin. We'll be back on Tuesday with an all-new episode of Click Here. Have a great weekend.
Looking for more of the cybersecurity and intelligence coverage you get on Click Here? Then check out our sister publication, The Record, from Recorded Future News. You'll get breaking cyber news from reporters in New York, Washington, London, and Kyiv, among others. And you'll see for yourself why it attracts hundreds of thousands of page views every month. Just go to therecord.media.